What's up out there, everybody? I hope you're all fantastic today. Welcome to Movies Never Say Die. I'm Anthony DeJoya, and this is your one-stop shop for retro movie content. And today we're continuing our adventures through the lost movies of the 1990s. This is episode 5, and I gotta say, guys, this is a supreme collection of films. As always, I have a movie from each year. They range from silly comedy to action to gripping drama to clenching suspense. So sit back and let's get into it. Now, first up is a movie I would consider to be an all-time favorite of mine. Some would say this movie is lost for good reason. However, in 1990, a groundbreaking comedy would be released about a couple of surfing garbage men that stumble onto a dead body in Men at Work, written, directed by, and starring Emilio Estevez, as well as his brother Charlie Sheen and Keith David. Now, Men at Work is just one of those comedies you will either have a complete blast with or just not get into it at all. Now, if you love absolutely silly, 100% mindless humor, then this movie is a fast-paced ride of amazing nonsensical hilarity. I think Estevez and Sheen are great in the leads. Sheen is known now for comedy after his sitcom era, but at this time, he was still relatively new to the genre outside of Major League, and he knocks it out of the park with a comical performance. This central plot is stupidly humorous, and when Keith David gets thrown into the mix, this movie is just really a riot of fun comedy and action. I think David delivers a ton of his own laughs. There are even more quotable lines during this tight runtime, and I think with the just the small town beach setting, that Men at Work is a fun, laughable escape. Now, it isn't perfect. The finale doesn't quite stick the landing, but I think with all these cartoonish characters and all the absurdity being rooted in a little bit of a reality, that Men at Work is a comical ride watching as these garbage men and their observer try to figure things out while evading corrupt businessmen, a pair of relentless bike cops, and a pair of bumbling hitmen. Next up is a tense drama about an American woman who goes to visit her husband's family in Iran, only to learn that he plans to keep them there forever. In 1991's Not Without My Daughter, starring Sally Field and Alfred Molina, from director Brian Gilbert. I remember being in my early teens and my family was watching this movie. I remember coming out of my room and just seeing the whole fam in a mess of tears, and at the time I couldn't have been less interested, but later when I was in college I actually watched this movie from start to finish, and it's without question a gripping ride of dramatic highs and lows. It's a tried and true woman in peril flick. In this case, it's a mother trying to get her daughter back into the States. It's kind of an international battle of custody between not just a mother and a father, but between what feels like a mother and an entire country. I think Sally Field really is just the driving force here. She really knocks it out of the park with just a great performance that you can just easily connect with. I think Molina is convincing as well, despite his character not being thoroughly written, in my opinion. His change of personality does kind of feel more like a plot device than overall. I think the emotional current here is a bit surface level. It doesn't really dive into the cultural subtext of things, but it was the early 90s, and at the core, seeing Field fight to get her daughter back is plenty gripping enough on its own. This movie follows a couple of teens going to high school in a rough part of Chicago who also take place in underground boxing matches. Against all odds, they became friends. Against their will, they became opponents in 1992's Gladiator, starring James Marshall, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Brian Dennehy. Generally, when people are talking about movies and the name Gladiator comes up, they instinctively think of Russell Crowe. However, when you're a true blue 80s and 90s movie geek like myself, the name Gladiator instinctively makes me think of Brian Dennehy and his illegal boxing circuit stocked with high school fighters. I love the grittiness of this movie, and despite the ridiculousness of the plot, I think the overall world of this film is more than able to just pull you in, to take you on this ride of surface level emotions and procedural friendships and in-the-ring melodrama. Gladiator is not a perfect film, but I do think it is perfect for its needs. It's a teen movie that you can connect with. And despite nobody in this movie truly feeling like high school students, it's still kind of just easy to turn a blind eye to in order to just take the journey of these two characters and their ultimate clash with Dennehy, who absolutely brings this movie just the menacing villain that it needed. I think this movie overall is pretty well acted for the most part. I think Dennehy and Gooding Jr. are solid, and Marshall, despite being a bit too stiff, I guess he does the job too. And overall, this movie is still just a suspenseful boxing movie meets high school thriller mashup that's a great time to watch today. This action thriller centers on a group of friends heading to a boxing match that take the wrong turn and find themselves on a fight for survival. Don't move, don't whisper, don't even breathe. It's Judgment Night from 1993, starring Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Dennis Leary, Stephen Dorff, and Jeremy Piven, directed by Stephen Hopkins. Now, personally, I can sit down for this movie at any time, no matter what I'm doing. I think it blends a great real-time plot that has intriguing layers of suspense and grittiness and unnerving tension to it. Then there's the blend of characters, all old friends, one a little brother with their own individual dynamics and history to themselves that all evolve over the course of this story as well. And then finally, there is the awesome performance from Dennis Leary. I really wished he would have played more seedy villains like this during his prime, but nonetheless, he does here, and he is awesome in my opinion. He's very capable, he's confident, a little bit comical, and definitely intimidating, and I really love how he handles himself in this character. And sure, Judgment Night is essentially a Die Hard-ish ride, but it's still a thrilling one filled with tons of action and suspense and close calls. These settings, I think, are perfect for the needs of the film, with this rundown city coming in as the perfect backbone for all the twists and turns that this story and its adventure takes. Now, you can't talk about Judgment Night also without talking about the world-class soundtrack that just blended rap with hard rock, resulting in really, I think, the perfect soundtrack for this plot. And this movie is just one that, despite its formulaic approach, can still just easily sweep you up and have you in the middle of the action on this terrifying night. Admittedly, this movie isn't necessarily lost, but it certainly is undermentioned, as it follows a pair of psychopathic lovers who embark on a road trip of murder and media glorification in Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers from 1994, starring Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, and Robert Downey Jr. This movie was far ahead of its time. It delivered a completely visceral experience. It's one of those movies you will kind of pull something new from it each time that you watch. When I was watching it as a young teen, it was just a completely sadistic ride of visual carnage, and with its odd camera angles and coloring changes and everything else that this movie throws at you visually. And then later in high school, I was able to kind of dive more into the concepts of the media exploitation and the just the commercialization of violence. I was able to kind of truly appreciate the performances from Harrelson and Lewis as well, who are just, I think, perfect as this Bonnie and Clyde-esque couple that become a media sensation. I think Natural Born Killers is just an ambitious movie, from storytelling, from the filmmaking aspect to the themes that it's exploring. I think it's just actually aged much better over time, and I think even if you've seen this movie, you will be pulled into its demented ride. And all these years later, it's kind of awesome to see both Lewis and Harrelson, much younger in their careers, going all in on these performances to make this twisted tale a timeless one. This gritty crime thriller is set in the 60s. It follows a Vietnam vet dealing with social and civil rights issues back at home that sees an opportunity to create a better life for he and his family, and potentially destroy it at the same time. And 1995's Dead Presidents, directed by the Hughes brothers, starring Lorenz Tate, Keith David, Chris Tucker, and a solid supporting cast. To me, Dead Presidents delivers a very gritty, decade-spanning exploration of the costs of war, not just in terms of service, but more so just the lasting impacts that it can have on a veteran's life. Here, an African-American veteran who, after his service in Vietnam, finds his dreams of life shattered in the just harsh realities of what is considered post-war America. Dead Presidents is lined with emotional and dramatic intensity, and it's all complemented with, in my opinion, incredible cinematography and direction. I think this movie has a strong atmosphere to it. It kind of feels like you're stepping back in time when watching this movie, and I think it's also extremely well acted. Lorenz Tate is certainly the lead, but the ensemble cast here is able to bring a lot of life and energy and, most important, screen presence to bolster these characters. This is a film that also delivers the suspense of a heist when the story takes a darker turn. I think the main hindrance in Dead Presidents is that it maybe tries to accomplish too much. Some of the characters, some of the motives, and a few of the turns do feel a bit contrived, but it's nothing that gets in the way of the impact that this movie can deliver. This suspenseful film is set in the late 1800s, and it follows a bridge builder and a legendary hunter who attempt to fend off lions attacking workers in Stephen Hopkins' The Ghost in the Darkness from 1996, starring Val Kilmer, Michael Douglas, and Tom Wilkinson, as well as a group of vicious lions. This movie actually received mixed reviews upon its release, and I think it's because it falls into a trap that a certain film like this often can, that being that its foundation is a bit too similar to something often relegated as being a prestige film, that being a lofty time period setting, a pair of flashy A-list actors in the lead, the backdrops of the African landscapes, and the dire importance of needing to build a bridge to connect civilizations. But Robert Redford and Meryl Streep are not in this movie, and really all The Ghost in the Darkness is an action thriller with savage lions as the villains. This is much more Black Rain than it is Dancing with Wolves, and it's an entertaining escape. Michael Douglas is so much fun in this movie. He's soaking it up as this legendary hunter with his moments of just unintentional comedy. Val Kilmer is delivering a performance that would tell you he actually thought it was a prestige film, and they do have a somewhat tense chemistry together, which I actually do think works well for the needs of this plot. I think the production design is great. It has a natural visual appeal to it. The tension also elevates nicely as the violence of the carnage increases with each lion attack. And sure, it's not perfect and there are some modest pacing issues, but overall the tease of these lions lurking around these characters at all times isn't necessarily Jaws, but it is fun, guilty pleasure suspense. Coming up next is a gripping mystery about a man who searches for his wife when she goes missing after their car breaks down in the desert. It's a movie that claimed it could happen to you, and that movie is 1997's Breakdown, starring Kurt Russell, J.T. Walsh, MC Gainley, and Kathleen Quinlan. Over the course of his career, Kurt Russell has played some big, bold characters with inflated personalities, but some of his best films are his simpler ones, and that's exactly what Breakdown is. It's a movie that doesn't try to get too clever. It doesn't try to work in too many twists and turns. It's about a normal couple on a road trip, and when the wife goes missing, the layers of the mystery begin to peel back in a very grounded and just eerily normal way. What makes this movie so intense and so unnerving is that it feels like these situations could happen to anybody at any time. I think Kurt Russell is great in the lead as this normal husband, just this pushed to the edge. You can easily sympathize with his helplessness. You can easily invest in his determination to find his wife. The supporting cast is awesome as well. Everybody's a bit creepy, but not forced creepy. Again, nothing here is overdone. I think all of these characters in this movie feel like real people that you've actually crossed paths with in your own life, and just the authentic atmosphere created in Breakdown just results in waves of tension with a well-crafted mystery that will easily have you locked in throughout the duration. Next up is a high-energy crime drama about a couple of young criminals making a life on armed robberies who both have dreams of getting out of the life, but instead find the walls closing in on them in Belly from 1998, directed by Hype Williams, starring hip-hop legends Nas, DMX, and T-Boz, as well as Tyron Turner and Terrell Hicks. No, I can understand where some would relegate Belly as being a case of style over substance. However, I would contend the opposite. Yes, the plot is a bit overly jumbled. It does lack a smooth procedural flow, and yes, placement of a stylistic montage is a focus over continuity of the storytelling, yet there's just something kind of cool and interesting about this movie that makes the raw performances and fragmented storytelling a surprisingly intriguing ride. Some could argue aren't really any likable characters here, and there's no denying the glorification of violence, but music video man Hype Williams delivers what you would expect, a full feature film that very much plays like a music video in long stretches. The dialogue is a bit self-righteous at times, but the edginess and the grittiness of this movie just makes it feel more like a real-life exploration of street crime and the just repercussions of one's actions. The music, as you would expect, is perfectly curated. It's the lifeblood of this movie's energy, and sure, there are better films in this genre, but I think Belly has many more positives than it does negatives to make it worth a watch. This crime caper is a solid remake that follows a rich playboy who steals art for amusement, but ultimately finds his match in a young, seductive detective in John McTiernan's The Thomas Crown Affair from 1999, starring Pierce Brosnan, Rene Russo, and Dennis Leary. I've only seen the original Thomas Crown Affair once many years ago, but I do think this remake, regardless of its comparisons to the original, is a fantastic film. First, you get the perfectly layered and structured plot that just lays out a devilishly entertaining caper. Then you get the perfectly sized supporting cast, and then front and center is the seductively charged performances from Brosnan and Russo. I remember watching this movie countless times as a teen. Rene Russo was and always will be my Mrs. Robinson, and shit, even today at 70, I'd still take her out on a romantic weekend to La Jolla if my wife wouldn't be filing divorce papers at the same time. I think she's awesome in this movie with a perfect blend of toughness and vulnerability. Then you get Pierce Brosnan, who's just soaking in the scenery here. He's essentially Bond without the Walther PPK. He's smooth, he's charming, he's cunning. He and Russo are just dynamite together. The Thomas Crown Affair just feels sleek. It feels worthy of the lavish lifestyle of its main character, and the rewatch value because of this movie's cinematic elegance is timeless in my opinion. And that's it for today, guys. Episode 5 is in the books. Like I said, 10 great movies. All of these movies are strong. They still hold up today. Let me know what you think of some or all of them if you've seen them. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and commenting on these videos. I truly do just enjoy talking movies with all of you guys. You guys make this so much fun to do. Be on the lookout for episode 6 coming very soon. I have a couple of other videos as well planned to kind of chop up and break up the continuity of this series a little bit. I hope to see you guys back there for that as well. And until my next video, movies never say die.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?